Hey folks, everything new under the sun. In the timeline of the return of the Lord, I have this verse, Matthew 24, or set of verses. And in red, you can see highlighted there. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many wax cold. So this is what is describing what's happening in the last days. They shall deliver you up to be afflicted, shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Are Christians hated by all nations? Basically, getting there. And then many shall be offended and shall betray one another and shall hate one another. Everybody's going to hate everybody else. Many false prophets shall rise and deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many will wax cold. Now, this verse in different translations says different things. This is Matthew 24 in English Standard Version, looking at verse 12 here. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will be wax cold. So if we go to King James, you can see, and because iniquity or sin shall abound, because there's sin everywhere, love of many will wax cold. But again, you go to a different version, and they translate it because lawlessness will be increased. And lawlessness again is synonymous with sin everywhere. And so here are some synonyms and similar words to lawlessness. And anarchy, interestingly, is the first one. Unrest, chaos, turmoil, misrule, strife, upheaval, turbulence, criminality, disruption, anarchism, disorganization, fusing, havoc, disarray, uprising, revolution. Think of the BLM protests that went on. Lawlessness, sinfulness increasing in the last days. We've never it's been a while since we've seen such significant things. There has been revolutions in times past, but I think we're seeing an increase in this. And you look at the wars and the rumors of wars. Lawlessness is abounding. Countries are invading others and threatening others. Well, there's other examples of lawlessness. This is from Jerusalem Post. This is just coming out. Jersey police admit unlawfully searching premises linked to Roman Abramovich in an effort to basically skewer any sort of a Russian connection. The police are unlawfully doing all sorts of things. There's a lawlessness in the police forces, in the government. Here's just another example out of Canada, the trucker convoy. The government of Canada, Trudeau, declared the Emergency Act, and the question was it legal? Were they allowed to do it? Were the factors there where there was no other law that could be used that existed already? Did they need to declare it? What's coming out of these? The review of the implication of this, or the putting this into place is what I'm trying to say, is that no, there were existing laws on the books that they could have used. Not to mention the fact that before this was ratified in the Senate, basically that the House of Parliament puts this through, and the Liberals put this through under Trudeau, and then and they can implement it right away. And then so I think it's 7 days later that the Senate has to go and vote on this and confirm it. The Senate is the the sober second thought, as it were, excuse me, and so they come in and confirm it and vote it into law if that's what they're going to do. But what happened while the Senate was debating? Right in the middle of the Senate debating this, Trudeau pulled it, because he had got 7 days before the Senate got to it to implement this and to force the trucker convoy out with extra force. And so by law, they have to review this, and it's coming into the light that, in fact, Trudeau didn't have the right to start this. The committee reviewing Trudeau's use of Emergencies Act faces a daunting task. The task of reviewing the Liberal government's historic use of Emergencies Act in response to what they call anti-vaccine mandates. They weren't anti-vaccine. They were just anti-mandate, anti-forcing. They weren't anti-vaccine necessarily, but they certainly didn't like the mandates. And the border crossings got off to an inauspicious start this week. Um, and it's a great and a heavy thing that they need to go and look at this. But it's coming out that, in fact, they had plenty of laws on the books they could have used. They didn't need to invoke this Emergencies Act. And then you think about the mandates, the lockdowns, the charter rights, charter of rights and freedoms that were breached in Canada, and the freedoms that were breached everywhere by this mandate. A lot of people lost their jobs over experimental drugs, and this was really encroaching into your Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and really bypassing that. You talk about Nuremberg trials and all this sort of thing, and I think it will come out that it was illegal at some point. But there's lawlessness, and the government will continue to do this in the last days. And that's exactly what Matthew 24 says. And because lawlessness will be increased, the love of many will grow cold. We're starting to give up on government, give up on society, and there's even hatred and distrust between the citizens. You look at the disconnect in the United States in the midterms, the difference between the right and the left. There's no agreeing anymore, and there's a split between them. We're not a homogeneous society anymore. You're either on the right or you're on the left, and there's no agreeing anymore. The love of many will grow cold, but he who endures to the end will be saved, and the gospel of the kingdom will be proclaimed throughout the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So we're going to go through lawless society, and the love of many will grow cold, and the gospel will be preached, and then the end will come. So this gives you a timeline of the return of the Lord, if you will. And so we see these things coming. The pandemic, I think, kicked it off. We're slowly going into economic collapse. You look at inflation, and job losses. Look at Facebook is laying off thousands of employees. Twitter laid off half its workforce. Many companies are starting to lay off people because they know that significant recession is coming, if not depression. We're in a recession already. And then I have famine, starvation. That's already happening around the world. Food is increasing. It's very real to everybody how much food has increased. And then you have the love grows cold. Violence is increasing. Lawlessness. And what happens when there's economic collapse, job losses, mandates that people don't agree with? Well, the government's going to come out and say, you know what, we need to control the situation. The citizens are going crazy. We need to put in laws and force the people to do what we want them to. And that's where the government control arrow comes into effect. And then it's a short hop, skip, and a jump over to a world order, world control, a world government, and then the mark of the beast system. So we're on the train. You can see the progression through all these items. And because lawlessness increases, the love of many will wax cold. Lawlessness is everywhere, and it's going through our courts. There's lawlessness in the police forces. There's lawlessness in the governments who are trying, who don't want free speech, who are trying to force everybody to do everything. So we're in the last days, folks. It's going to get harder, especially to be a Christian, and to be a law-abiding Christian. It's going to get harder as the government clamps down, limits your free speech, limits your freedom, and it doesn't abide by any rules in the Charter of Rights and Freedoms anymore, or in the legal code. The Trudeau government went above and beyond the laws, and they just implemented the Emergencies Act, and they didn't wait for the Senate to approve it. And as soon as the Senate was approving it, they decided, oops, we don't need this anymore. The Senate doesn't need to vote on this anymore. Oops, we're taking it off the tables. No need to talk about it, Senate, because I think the Senate would have came out and said, no, this is illegal. You can't do this. But the Trudeau government got what they wanted in the short term, and it was illegal. And I think that's what's going to come out of the review of the Emergencies Act. But it's a little too late at that point. There's no legal teeth to that. There's no repercussions on the Liberal government other than public opinion. And the public opinion is going take what the mainstream media shows them and say that they're a bunch of anti-vaxxers and bigots and racists that were in any of these groups. And so public opinion is swayed by the media. The government controls the media. And the government controls the CBC as the funding, massive funding. Now, the conservative government is looking to get rid of a lot of that funding, which may get a more balanced playing field in the media. But at this point, honestly, TV and news media is old anyways, and we may not want to be supporting that at this point anyways. So, folks, lawlessness is increasing. You see it, I see it, and it's a sign of the last days.